Hello, Mark. My English name is Lydia, and my Chinese name is Juliet, and my student number is S04411056. The title of the speech is How to Separate Fact and Fiction Online by Markham, Nolan. I'm the sophomore at the CUE. I've been a journalist now since I was about 17, and it's an interesting industry to be in at the moment because, as you all know, there's a huge amount of upheaval going on in the media. And most of you probably know this from the business angle, which is that the business model is pretty good. And as my grandfather would say, the profits have been gobbled up by Google. So it's really interesting time to be a journalist, but the upheaval that I'm interested in not on the output side, it's on the input side. It's concerned with how we get information and how we gather the news, and that's changed because we've had a huge shift in the balance of power from the news organization to the audience, and the audience for such a long time was in a position where they didn't have any way of affecting news or making any change. They couldn't really connect, and that's a change irrevocably. My first connection with the news media was in 1984. The BBC had a one-day strike. I wasn't happy. I was angry. I wouldn't. I couldn't. I couldn't see my cartoons. So I wrote a letter, and it's a very effective way of ending your hate mail. Left Markham, age 4. Still works. I'm not sure if I had any impact on the one-day strike, but what I do now is that I took them 3 weeks to get back to me, and that was a long journey. It took that long for anyone to have any impact and get some feedback, and that's changed how now because as journalists we interact in real time. We're not in a position where the audience is reacting to news. We are reacting to the audience, and we are actually relying on them. They are helping us find the news. They are helping us figure out what is the best angle to take and what is the stuff that they want to hear. So it's a real time thing. It's much quicker. It's happening on a constant basis, and the journalist is always playing catch up. To give an example of how we rely on the audience, on the 5th of September in Costa Rica, an earthquake hit. It was a 7.6 magnitude. It was fairly big, and 16 seconds is the amount of time it took for it to travel 215 kilometers to Managua. So the ground shook in Managua 16 seconds after it hit the epicenter. 13 seconds later, the first message went onto Twitter, and it was someone saying trembler, which means earthquake. So 16 seconds was how long it took for the physical earthquake to travel. 30 seconds later, news of that earthquake had traveled all around the world. Instantly, everyone in the world hypothetically had the potential to know that an earthquake was happening in Managua, and that happened because this one person had a documentary instinct, which was to post a status update, which is what we all do now. So if something happens, we put our status update, or we post a photo, we post a video, and it all goes up into the cloud in a constant stream. And what that means is just constant huge volumes of data going up, exactly staggering. When you look at the numbers. Every minute there are 72 more hours of video up on YouTube. So that's every second more than an hour More than an hour of video gets uploaded, and in photos, Instagram 58 photos are uploaded to Instagram a second. More than 3,500 photos go up onto Facebook. So by the time I'm finished talking here, there there there'll be 864 more hours of video on YouTube than there were when I started, and 2.5 million more photos on Facebook and Instagram than when I started. So it's an interesting position to be in be in as a journalist because we should have access to everything and any event that happens anywhere in the world. I should be able to know about it pretty much instantaneously as it happens for free, and that goes for every single person in this room. The only problem is when you have that much information, you have to find the good stuff, and that can be incredibly difficult when you're dealing with those volumes. And nowhere was this brought home more than during Hurricane Sandy. So what you had in Hurricane Sandy was a superstorm that the likes of which we hadn't seen for a long time, hitting the iPhone capital of the universe. Laughter, and you got volumes of media that we'd never seen before. What that meant that journalists had to deal with fakes, so we had to deal with old photos that were being reposted. We had to deal with composite images that were merging photos from previous storms. We had to deal with images from films like The Day After Tomorrow, Laughter, and we had to deal with images that were so realistic it was nearly difficult to tell if they were real at all. Laughter. But joking aside, there were images that this one from Instagram which was subjected to a grilling by journalists. They weren't really sure. It was filtered in Instagram. The lighting was questioned. Everything was questioned about it, and it turns out to be true. It was from Avenue C in downtown Manhattan, Manhattan, which was flooded. And the reason that they could tell that it was really real was because they could get to the source. And in this case, these guys were New York food bloggers. They were well respected. They were new, so this one wasn't a debunk. It was actually something that they could prove, and that was the job of the journalist. It was filtering all this stuff, and instead of going and finding the information and bringing it back to the reader, you were holding back the stuff that was potentially dim, dam, damaged. And finding the source becomes more and more important. Finding the good source and Twitter is where most journalists now go. It's that the de facto real-time news word, if you know how to use it, because there is so much on Twitter. And a good example of how useful it can be, but also how difficult was the Egyptian revolution in 2011. And as a non-Arabic speaker, as someone who was looking from the outside from Dublin Twitter list and list of good sources, people we could establish were credible, were really important. And how do you build a list like that from scratch? Well, it can be quite difficult, but you have to know what to look for. This visualization was done by an Italian academic. He's called Adrian Panison, and he basically took the Twitter conversations in Tar Tahrir Tahrir Square on the date that Hosni Mubarak would eventually resign, and the dots you can see it as a retreat. So when someone retweets a message, a connection is made between two dots. And the more times this message is retweeted by other people, the more you get to see notice this connection being made. And it's an amazing way of visualizing the conversation. But what you get is hints at who is more interesting and who is worth investigating. And as the conversation grew and grew, it became more and more lively, and eventually you were left with the huge, big, rhythmic pointer of this conversation. You could find the notes though, and then you went and you go, right, I've got into investigate these people. These are the ones that are obviously making sense. Let's see who they are. Now in the deal log of information. In a dialect of information, this is where the real-time web gets really interesting for a journalist like myself, because we have more tools than ever to do that kind of investigation. And what you start digging, when you start digging into the sources, you can go further and further than you ever could before. Sometimes you come across a piece of content that is compelling. You want to use it, you're dying to use it, but you are not 100% sure if you can, because you don't know if a source is credible. You don't know if it's a script. You don't know if it's a upload. And you have to do that investigative work. And this video, which I'm going to let run through, was one we discovered a couple of weeks ago. Video getting real windy in just a second. Rain and wind sounds, explosions. Oh shit. Meg Markham Nolan. Okay, so now if you are the news producers, this is something you have to run with, because obviously, this is good, you know. This is fantastic reaction from someone very genuine. Video that they've shot in their back garden. But how do you find this? If this person, if it's true, if it's fake, or if it's something that's old and has been reposted? So we set about going to work on this video, and the only thing that we had to go on was the username on the YouTube account. There was only one video posted to that account, and the username was Rita Crew. And we didn't know if Rita existed or if it was a fake name, but we started looking, and we used free internet tools to do so. The first one was called SportQ, which allowed us to look for Rita Crews. So we looked all over the US. We found them in New York. We found them in Pennsylvania. We found them in Pennsylvania, Nevada, and Florida. So we went and we looked for a second free internet tool called Wolfram Alpha. And we checked the weather report for the day in which this video had been uploaded. And when we went through all those various cities, we found that in Florida there were some thunderstorms and rain on the day. So we went to the white pages, and we looked through the Rita Cruise in a phone book. We looked through a couple of different addresses that took us to Google Maps, where we found a house, and we found a house with a swimming pool that looked remarkably like Rita's. So we went back to the video, and we had to look for clues that we could cross reference. So if you look in the video, There's the big umbrella. There's a white lilo in the pool. In the pool, there are some unusual rounded edges in the swimming pool, and there's three trees in the background. And we went back to Google Maps and we look a little bit closer. And sure enough, there's the white lilo. There are two trees. There's the umbrella is actually folded in its foot. A little bit of trickery, and there are the rounded edges on the swimming pool, so we were able to clear the video, make sure that it had been shot, and then our client was delighted because they were able to run it without being worried. Sometimes the search for truth, though, is a little bit less flippant, and it has much greater consequences. Syria has been really interesting for us because obviously a lot of the time you're trying to debunk stuff that can be potentially war crime evidence. So this is where YouTube actually becomes the most important repository of information about going what's going on this in the world. So this video I'm not going to show you how the whole thing because it's quite gruesome. But if you hear some of the sounds, this is from him video shouting. And what this video shows when you watch the whole thing through is bloody bodies being taken out of a pickup truck and thrown over a bridge. The allegation were that these guys were Muslim Brotherhood and they were throwing Syrian army officers' bodies off the bridge, and they were cursing and using blasphemous language. And there were lots of counterclaims about who they were and whether or not they were what the video said it was. So we talked to some sources in Hema who we had been back and forth with on Twitter, and we asked them about it. And the bridge was interesting to us because it was something we could identify. Three different sources said there three different things about the bridge. They said one, the bridge doesn't exist. Another one said the bridge doesn't exist, but it's not in Ham. Does exist, but it's not in Ham. It's somewhere else. And the third one said, I think the bridge does exist, but the dam upstream of the bridge was closed, so rivers should actually have been dry. So this doesn't make sense. So that was the only one that gave us a clue. We looked through the video for other clues. We saw the distinctive really, which we could use. We look at the curves. The curves were throwing shadows south, so we could tell the bridge was running east-west across the river. It had black and white curves, and we look at the river itself. We could see there's a concrete stone on the west side. There's a cloud of blood. There's less blood in the river, so the river is flowing south to north. That's what that tells me. And as you look away from the bridge, there's a divot of the left-hand side of the bank, and the river narrows. So onto Google Maps we go, and we start looking through literally every single bridge we go to them that we talk about. We start just literally going through every time that road crosses the river crossing of the bridge that don't match. We are looking for one that crosses east-west, and we get to Hammer. We get all the way from the dam to Hammer, and there's no bridge. So we go a bit further. We switch to the satellite view, and we find another bridge, and everything starts to light up. The bridge looks like it's crossing the river east to west, so this could be our bridge. And we zoom right it. We start to see that it's got a median. So it's a two-lane bridge, and it's got the black and white curves that we saw in the video. And as we click through it, you can see someone's uploaded photos to go with the map, which is very handy. So we click into the photos, and the photos start showing us more detail that we could cross-reference with the video. The first thing that we see is we see black and white curving, which is handy because we've seen that before. We've seen the distinctive really that we saw the guys throwing the bodies over, and we keep going through it until we are centered that this is our bridge. So what does that tell me? I've got to go back go back now to my three sources and look at what they told me. The one who said the bridge didn't exist. The one who said the bridge wasn't in heaven. And the one guy who said yes, the bridge does exist, but I'm not sure about the water levels. Number three is looking at the most truthful all of a sudden, and we've been able to find that out using some free internet tools. Sitting in a sub cubicle in a office in the Dublin in the space of 20 minutes, and that's part of the joy of this. Although the web is running like a torrent, there's so much information that is incredibly hard to sift and getting harder every day. If you use them intelligently, you can find out incredible information. Given a couple of clues, I could probably find out a lot of things about most of you in the audience that you might not like me finding out. But what it tells me is that at the time when there's a greater abundance of information than there ever has been. It's harder to filter. We have greater tools. We have free internet tools that allow us help us to this kind of investigation. We have algor, algorithms we have algorithms that are smarter than ever before and computers that are quicker than ever before. But here's the thing: algorithms are rules. They are binary. They are yes or no. They are black and white. Truth is never binary. Truth is a value. Truth is emotional. It's fluid. And above all, is human. No matter how quick we get with computers, no matter how much information we have, you'll never be able to remove the human from the truth-seeking exercise, because in the end, it is a uniquely human trait. Thanks very much. Applause.